Today, we're looking at Colorverse Morningstar. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Colorverse Morningstar is a turquoise ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Lamy All-Star with a 1.1 stub. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's Nib Creeper to take my notes for this video. Now before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this ink flees the water. It is running up the test paper. It can't get away fast enough. And it all gathers at the top, and we get to see that this is a lovely green-leaning turquoise. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And you can't tell the difference between the two of them. This means this ink is going to have no resistance at all. Now, resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it is to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handled itself remarkably well considering what we saw in the chromatography test. It did spread out from being an extra fine to almost a medium in writing. The top of the lowercase h did start to bloom some, but it looks like it would hold itself together in a note-taking situation if you went back and decided to highlight. It also did very well with the highlighter considering what happens with water, which completely reactivates, pulls it entirely off the page. You really do see the white of the paper coming through. That's only 30 seconds, and some of that ink I kind of put back down accidentally trying to get it off, but that was gone. The same sort of problem did happen with Pen Flush. Pen Flush did everything that water did because water completely was removing it, and I accidentally was putting some of this back down, and I am sorry. However, I don't think you're going to need Pen Flush. And bleach, don't be ridiculous. The 1/3 bleach solution obliterates it off the page, but there is no reason to be using that to get this out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Colorverse Morningstar has a viscosity of 2.12, making it normal. Just inside normal, but normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nib. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Colorverse Morningstar has an average dry time of 16 seconds, making it again normal. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and I'm glad it was a 2 ml sample. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, and it's just a little too dark for me as a kind of aquamarine kind of color. It's off. I don't know what it is. It's off. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to look at some of the other stuff I have. I don't know. The 1.1 is a definitely lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It's got spots of shading, not great shading, spots of shading. In brown, the W looks a little lighter than the rest of the word. The looks a little darker than quick. So there's some of the shading. The E looks a little darker in over. And that's about it. It's not really a consistent shade. It's not like it's bad for that stuff. I don't know. 11 seconds to dry. Now medium is a noticeably darker tone to the darker tone we saw with the 1.1. It has no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade whatsoever. 14 seconds to dry. When we look at the scrubbies, the extra fine shows us a little bit of color variation. It showed us up here that it wants to give it. It's just not. The medium shows us none. We got none. The smear test, I don't think you could recover it if you had to. Tomoe River. No bleeding. Yes, we get ghosting. I think the color looks best on Tomoe River. Of all the papers we have here, I think it's the one. The other one, it might look decent. Nope, it doesn't. It looks the best on the Tomoe River. Again, it's slightly different tones paper, and it's always worth testing in that. And this is a weird result on this paper. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine, I don't know what in the world was going on here, but you can see this. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. The shading goes from light, little darker, little darker, little darker, little darker, little darker, little darker, dark, 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 dark. So, I mean, it traveled up in the shading from very light all the way through in the writing, which was kind of neat, but it was like my pen was running out of ink backwards. But my pen was working perfectly fine here, so I don't know what happened. I'm going to call that some amazingly interesting, I wish I could replicate it shading. It's like my pen ran out of ink backwards. Yep, 18 seconds to dry. Medium, very dark tone, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 26 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium showed us no color variation. Yet, obviously, look at that extra fine. I think it's a freak result, but it is the result. So we got way more color variation, probably the most shading I've ever seen on Tomoe River. Medium showed us none, we got none. The smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. So, Rhodia. Now we get some bleed spots on the scrubby. I'm putting it down stupid thick. I probably scratched through the page. Other than that, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo, sheen, almost no shade at all. There's like one spot that's a tiny bit lighter. That's the farthest curly cute thing on the M, and that's it. Medium is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather spread, halo, sheen. There's a couple of darker shade spots. Okay, the A in lazy is slightly darker. The E in over is slightly darker, and that's it. That's all we're seeing for shading. So other than that, really nothing. 12 seconds to dry. Medium, dark tone like we saw with the 1.1. It has no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 15 seconds to dry. The extra fine scrubby showed some color variation, and it lied because, yes, there was a couple letters, but that's not shading. Come on. If you're calling that shading, it's because you want to call this a shading ink. The medium showed us none, and we got none. The smear test you could likely recover if you did smear. So what happens on life paper? Life paper does very nice for a lot of things. It has no bleeding, no ghosting. I'm not a fan of this ink, but it performs well. It's very well behaved in every other way. It's just not the color for me. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 10 seconds to dry. It gets to be a darker tone, not quite as dark, just a hair lighter than we get with the 1.1. It's like one shade lighter. With no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading, 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium showed us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it. In a smear test, you could likely recover that. So, not black and red, my bad. Levenger. The only problem I have with this paper is their tiny little lines. Stop formatting the paper for me. Let me get the paper blank. Give me the option of a blank page. It's got to be cheaper. It's got no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone. Way lighter, with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 7 seconds to dry. The medium is a way darker tone, the same dark tone that we got with the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it. In the smear test, you'd probably be able to recover this if you did smear while you were writing. Franklin Christoph. I don't know what happened. I'm ignoring this. That's the scrubby, so I'm putting it on stupid thick, but I do see spots, 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 spots. A lot of spots coming through. A lot of spots coming through. Now it's coming through. It has not come through. It is not touching the page underneath. It is not making the back of the page unusable. If you're absolutely anal retentive, this is going to be the end of the world. I don't use the back of this paper. I'm anal retentive, apparently. I've just gotten out of using the back of pages out of sort of frustration of ghosting on a lot of paper. And then I've gone to just using very good paper when I know I need to use the backs. That's why I use these like reporter style notebooks. I'm going to call it reporter style. What is that? I've gone to largely using the Rhodia number 16 because of the top spiral. I can use the front and back, and Rhodia paper usually does pretty good. So that's the only reason I do it. It's not my favorite paper, but for note taking, it does pretty darn good for me. Sorry, back to Franklin Christoph. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It's not a bad color here. I like the color better with the tone of this paper. I think it looks much nicer. Lighter tone with the extra fine. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. Darker tone, just a hair lighter than we see with the 1.1. On the medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. It took 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium showed us no color variation. We didn't expect any, we didn't get any. And the smear test, you'd probably be able to recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that is all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Colorverse Morningstar, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I really wanted a nice darker brown, and I chose Diamine's Macassar because I really thought it would make this look more vibrant when they're together. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Colorverse Morningstar? I enjoy a good aquamarine color in that turquoise range. This one felt like it was like missing something, and it just wasn't. It was like, yeah, all right, that's okay. That's aquamarine. But it didn't have that something. I don't know. It was missing a something for me. Now, it didn't perform bad. It didn't have any real problems, but it was missing something. I would say, by all means, if you really do like turquoise or aquamarine inks, give it a try. However, the cost for a bottle of this ink, for me, makes me go, I'll try some others. Thanks for watching.